What's up, guys? Welcome back to the review and discussion for UnOrdinary episode 329 and 330. I decided to kind of condense these two into one video just because I feel like they play off really well, and also to save myself a little bit of time, I'm not gonna lie. So with that being said, I do just want to kind of jump right into it. Episode 329 starts out immediately with Doc walking to his apartment. He's in the building, sees a sign of he sees a wanted sign of both Layla and Sarah that he tears down. His neighbor sees him doing this and reports him, that snitch ass bitch. But she does say that this is a repeating occurrence that he's done. So yeah, Doc's looking out for the two of them. Now, we then cut to a scene of Layla tending to Sarah in bed with a fever due to pushing herself. Sarah, of course, states that she did it for the fun of it, and that Valerie just seemed really punchable, while Layla's kind of like, you didn't need to go all out, and Sarah was just like, she had it coming. You know, classic Sarah. I think it's really funny. I think it's really funny because we, the audience, know, we've wanted to see Valerie get what's coming to her for so long. And Sarah doesn't even know all that Valerie's done, but she still gave Valerie the smoke, which I thought was hilarious. Sarah does also mention, though, that her aura channels are still open, and Layla is relieved that it seems that Doc's cure has worked. I am curious, though, if it will still work in the near future. I am wondering if we are going to see some kind of drawback to it. But meanwhile, Doc is seen cooking dinner while Bureau members named Floor and Orson show up with a warrant. Brief side note, I went to check if I recommended either of those names. I didn't. But they arrive with a warrant. Doc tries to, do the flex of like, okay, yeah, you can search my apartment when you come back with the warrant. And they're just like, we have a warrant, so please stand aside. While they are searching, though, they kind of notice a few of the things. They notice him cooking dinner. They ask if he lives alone. He says yes. They notice that he's doing some experiments. He kind of covers his track there. But they start to head to Sarah's room. This is where the chapter got really interesting. Doc activates his ability on them, and it's intense. We've known for a while that his ability is called Nightmare, and that he's an elite tier at level 4.2. But we've never truly seen what it's like to be on the receiving end of that ability. We've seen it shown briefly in the past when he was still at the school. We saw that he used it on Tanner and his gang when they were bullying John. And I think he's also used it on John a few times in the past as well. But it's really intense. He basically traps them in an illusion, a nightmare, in the apartment where everything begins to start running with red blood. Orson sees Fleur's body fall limp and begins to crumble away to a skeleton, and he turns around to see a demon with 4 arms and everything kind of reaching for him, towering over him. And there's clearly no sign of Doc anywhere in the illusion, and Orson just kind of very stunned by what's happening. In reality, though, we see that Doc is actually knocking him out with the frying pan. He knocks both of them unconscious to the floor. I'm gonna be honest, I am wondering if they're just dead, because they fall to the floor. He hits them both in the head with a frying pan, and there's a lot of blood. They're probably not dead based on what we've seen in UnOrdinary, but I don't know, honestly. But Layla walks out of the room and sees everything that's going on. Doc tells her that it's time to go. While they're in the car heading out of the area, Sarah laments that they can't come back, but Layla says we'll see when things simmer down. And they are now officially heading to Neil, it seems. Now, I like that Sarah is more likely out of the picture for John for a bit. It does suck because especially right now, Sarah would be a massive help to John. But it does still feel a bit strange that we're getting another Sarah's leaving and can never return moment when we had this with John already when she went to stay with Layla and Doc. It's really strange that this is kind of happening again, and I'm pretty sure I mentioned before, I didn't necessarily like how quickly Sarah and John were reunited after the moment of her being like, John, I don't think I can ever come back to Wellston, and John being really upset and not wanting her to go. it was really strange to me that they still were able to see each other fairly regularly after that. But nonetheless, it does seem like now she will be. I think we will still get updates on Sarah. Of course, she's the second main character, but I do think now we will definitely not be seeing her and John reunited for a while, unless Uru does something where John's training, Cameron takes him to the same area that Neil is controlling, or something like that. Uru, please stick to keeping John and Sarah separated for a while. But, so that's that. Meanwhile, at the safe house, the trio is briefly seen talking about Kuyo not wanting to meet with Grayson again, but Remy does say that she gave him the address of their new hideout. But then Evie and Dylan show up to ask about John, saying that he hasn't been going to class, and he hasn't been answering about combat classes. Blyke then realizes that he hasn't seen John come out of his room in a while. Then the three of them go to check up on him after school. Upon seeing him, though, they all see how awful and tired he looks, and they all have an immediate look of concern on their face, as John just tells them, like, oh, like, what do you guys want? And that's where episode 330 ends up, or starts out. So real quick, episode 329 is a fairly good episode. I do like it. Like I said, I do think it's kind of strange that we get like another situation of Sarah never being able to come back. But the stuff with Doc, and I want to talk about that with Doc too, but I will talk about it after episode 330. The stuff with Doc is really, really cool. So honestly, I would give this episode a level 7, honestly. It is still a pretty interesting episode to read, but there are a few setbacks with it. Now, episode 330, like I said, it kicks off where the previous episode is. We briefly see John just in his room looking over things again, looking at pictures of his mom and his dad. When he gets the knock at the door, he answers and he tells them, like, what's up? What do you guys want? And things happen in this episode that I really like, that you guys know I've been wanting to see for a long time. Remy is the person to ask John if he's okay. They all look at him. They're all just like, but Remy is the person to break the silence and ask John if he's okay. Now, I like this move from Uru because it's small, but like I've been saying, I've been wanting Remy to be the person who supports John in this moment, because she's been through this before. She's had a person be killed from the Bureau of Authority. So I do like the decision that Uru made there. It's phenomenal. But yes, and I do like that after that, when Remy asks, John tells them the truth. John doesn't brush things off. John doesn't say, I'm fine, I just need some time alone, blah, blah, blah. He doesn't say that, which, of course, John would have been absolutely in his right to do. But John just says, he tells them the truth. He tells them, my dad was killed by the Bureau. And when he tells them, they all act in horror. They all seem very sad that he's dead, because they met William and they loved William. Everyone who met William loved William. But Remy realizes that he was being silent for UnOrdinary being spread again. Remy then speaks up again, offering for him to talk to them if he needs it. And John does accept it. Now, in this episode, there are multiple instances of this, but I loved so much. This is a major character moment for John, because obviously before, John would never open up to these guys. I would say even a bit after Rowden Hill, when he was trying to, when they were all affected by that, I would say even a bit after Rowden Hill, he probably wouldn't have opened up to everyone. But he's had conversations with them before. He's talked to Blyke. He's been talking to them. They all have said, hey, we need to have each other's back. And we do. If you need us, we got you. Blyke told him that when John first heard about UnOrdinary being spread again. And so I love that John just doesn't try to, like go into a shell. He doesn't try to hide things. He just tells them the truth. He opens up to them because he's willing to be vulnerable with these people. And I love that. I love that. I loved this character moment for John. So he shows them the new copy of UnOrdinary, the printed version that William gave him. One thing that I believe Solo pointed out in this episode, it seems that John has kind of hidden or like put face down the pictures of Jane and William, like the pictures that Cameron gave to him. So I am curious to see if he did keep that from them, if he's going to continue to keep that from them. But we'll have to see. We'll have to see. But Blythe then sees on the cover that the book, or as he's flipping through it, that it was dedicated to John. He's going over and he's just kind of like, so this is the book that started the movement and everything. He's flipping pages and he sees, wait, why is this dedicated to you? And once again, John opens up to them and tells them that his dad wrote the book because when John first got his powers, he didn't listen to everyone. Basically what everyone kind of knew about John to begin with, that John was a problem child. And John tells him, my dad was just trying to help me because of how much of a problem I was. He didn't want to hurt anyone. He was just trying to help me. And John just feels horrible because his dad's gone now. But Remy tells John he's not gone because his book is still around. His words will still have an impact on society. And his words even terrified the Bureau of Authority. And Remy's right. There's an old saying in a lot of cultures in the world that you're never really dead until the last time someone speaks your name or the last time you're remembered by people. We in the UnOrdinary community all love William, but we all know, I think we all knew that he was on borrowed time. And I think we all expected this. We didn't want him to die, but I think we all expected this to come for him. But William is a character who will still continue to have an impact on the story. His story is what has set everything in motion. Well, his story is what set everything in motion originally. Clearly, you could say that John getting his ability is what set everything in motion. But I love that Remy is comforting John throughout this episode. I love this interaction because like I said, this Remy is the person who should be comforting John through this time. And I really like it. I really like it. And I mentioned in the reaction, I think that this is enough one-on-one interactions with them, but I wouldn't mind. I definitely wouldn't be opposed to seeing a little bit more. I'm not saying that I'm going to start shipping Jemmy or anything. I'm not saying that I want like them to become best friends, but I wouldn't mind if we get a bit more interactions of Remy checking up on John like, hey, like, let's just hang out the two of us. Like, let's go get boba. Tell me about your dad, and I'll tell you about my brother. Because these two have a connection. It's not romantic or anything. It's not like what John and Sarah have, but it is something that they can both help each other out. Or Remy can especially help John out in this moment. So that's that. One thing that I really did want to point out in this episode that I really, really liked. There's a moment when Remy is telling John, your dad is not gone. There's a moment where John is just kind of like sitting on the floor, like leaning on his bed, but Remy is standing up. She's looking down at him as she's telling him, your dad's not gone. And he's just looking up at hers. And the screen behind them, the background is just white. And it's very much reminds me of when Sarah broke John out of his barrier and told him, you're not a monster, John. I love that. I think it's kind of weird that this happened again. Actually, I think this also happened when Sarah told John that she was leaving. Nonetheless, I still think it's a really cool effect, and I think it's still really symbolic. It's just a pure scene, in my opinion. But Remy tells John that they're not going to get away with this, and he agrees. Ison then asks, like, or says like, hey, they silenced this before, they'll probably just do it again. But John says like, I'm not gonna let them get away with this. And Eisen honestly fairly says, dude, how do you think you're gonna go against the Bureau? Like, how do you think you're gonna come out on top with this? And both John and Remy at the same time just say, we'll keep spreading UnOrdinary. And they both look at each other in a moment of like, we just agreed. And again, it's really cool because Remy read UnOrdinary recently and she liked it. This book had a tremendous effect on her brother. John is the person who's read UnOrdinary the most in the world, who understands its meaning and its message more than anyone. He understood this even when he was in his darkest time. And so, yeah, I love that they're both on board with this. But Blyke and Eisen are both kind of like, ... And John just says, I'm going to do whatever it takes. If I have to split it into parts or just spread it no matter what, I'm going to spread it. Remy also brings up a few points that people are going to start looking into why the book was banned, how it suddenly resurfaced. They're going to start to question the authorities even more. Blyke even says that if UnOrdinary continues to spread, more vigilantes may start to pop up. And at some point, the Bureau will have to explain themselves. Eisen even thinks it could possibly buy them more time, because with more vigilantes, the authorities won't have enough time to focus on the three of them. I'll touch on that in a little bit. Eisen then suggests condensing the book, getting the key points across, because it's too long. If they can condense it, they can spread it more easily, people will digest it faster and get the message. And Blyke suggests distributing it throughout the school first. Once again, touch on that in a moment. I think that's a really bad idea. But Remy then suggests posting it online, etc., etc. John then tells them he can help with the key points since he's such an expert on it, which the three of them agree on. Now, I do think this could work. I do think, once again, Uru might be showing things to be thought of to be too easy. Spreading it throughout the school, there's already a target on their backs. There's already a target on Vaughn. I don't think that's... Well, no, I think they do know that. Nonetheless, there's already a target on Vaughn. If UnOrdinary starts spreading throughout the school, it will just lead further and further. Now, that being said, if Cassandra gets a hold of the book, if she reads it, I think Cassandra is definitely someone who would get on board with UnOrdinary's message. So I am curious now, if she reads UnOrdinary, would she change sides and say, you know what, no, Vaughn should remain in charge of the school? Nonetheless, I think that could really backfire. And once again, just because there's more vigilantes in the moment doesn't mean that they won't still expend resources or top agents like Valerie, who already have a history with you guys, to go after you guys. And also, Valerie's not in charge of their case. A person connected to Ember isn't in charge of their case. Cassandra is. And I think that this could also backfire to that aspect, with Cassandra getting more evidence that they should be expelled. Nonetheless, Remy says, okay, let's meet back up tomorrow. Homework for tonight, read the book, guys. So Blyke and Eisen begin to head out. Eisen is really excited to read the book, and even Blyke is kind of like, why are you so excited? And Eisen admits, I've been curious about it. And honestly, I feel like this is kind of a switcherooski that Uru's pulling, because I don't think Eisen has ever really shown interest in the book, but now that it's kind of out there, he's kind of like, well, I have been curious. I think she might be doing like a little switcherooski on this one with us, but at the same time, Eisen is a journalist, and a book like UnOrdinary, yeah, I wouldn't doubt it if he was actually curious at some point. But they leave, and it's just Remy and John. And once again, another beautiful John moment that I wanted for a while. John tells Remy he apologizes for what he said about Rey. He says, I'm sure your brother was a good king, and he actually went after what he wanted to do, so I'm sorry what happened to him. Jon apologized for what he said about Rey. Like I said in the past, what he said about Rey wasn't fair, but in his defense, he didn't know a thing about Rey. He didn't know about who Rey was. When Jon found out about Rey, that he was a vigilante who was killed, the very vigilante that Jon defended while Sarah made fun of, he felt awful. Jon, once again, wanted to hide. He didn't know what to say. Jon's taking ownership of his words in the past, and he's owning up to them and telling Remy, I'm sorry, I was wrong. And Remy, of course, says, she accepts it. She says, thank you. That means a lot. And she tells him, we may never be able to see our loved ones again, but we can still grow from what they've taught us and finish what they started. And she offers Jon a handshake as she says, we're going to make the authority pay. And Jon takes the hand in agreement. And like I said, the Remy and Jon stuff in this episode is really good. I really like it, and I'm glad it happened. I am satisfied and content with this. Like I said, wouldn't be opposed to a few more one-on-one interactions, but I am very, very content with how this turned out. The chapter then ends off with Jon meeting up with Caden, asking him to take him to see Sarah again. And Caden breaks the news to him that they left to meet up with Neil. I'm very, very curious as to why Caden didn't go with them, because I'm pretty sure he was also under Neil. But I guess it makes sense. He is still a college student. But this does also make me think Caden's with Oren alone now. And I feel like Caden can become a very dangerous weapon for Oren. So, yeah, I am nervous about that. But Jon, hearing that, once again, the authorities have interfered with his life, shows he's angry. And Caden even asks Jon if it's urgent, if it needs to happen. And like I said in my reaction, I definitely do think it is urgent. I believe Sarah would have no qualms with Jon wanting to talk to her, needing to talk to her, because this is an awful situation. And Sarah obviously would love to be there for Jon, I'm sure. But once again, Jon makes a mature decision and says, no, it's not. It can wait. And he acknowledges that Sarah has a lot to deal with already. And it's sad, but it's very mature of Jon to make that decision, to set aside his suffering so that he doesn't have to burden his friend with more than she already has already. Caden then tells Jon that he does have something for him, and he gives Jon one vial of Doc's serum cure. And he says that it's had long-lasting effects on Sarah, and Jon sees it, and that's where the episode ends. Is Jon gonna take it? I'm not sure, honestly. Well, I think he's going to take it. Will he take it, though? I'm not sure. I am still kind of thinking that Cameron's going to help Jon a little bit with his ability. But this would get a way to get his aura channels back up and running. And if it is a permanent solution, cool, they're back. But, yeah, that's where the episode ends off. Now, last thing I do want to touch on, 2 character highlights that are in both episodes back to back that I think definitely deserve some praise. Doc and Isen. Major character moments in these episodes. Why? Because both of them put aside their personal desires for the sake of the people they love. Doc has always said flat out he wants nothing to do with Spectre. He didn't want to continue his relationship with Layla. He just wanted to help John and Sarah. He wanted nothing to do with Spectre. And yet, Doc made the ultimate sacrifice play, and he assaulted not one, but two members of the Bureau of Authority, knocked them unconscious so that he can escape with them. He's been covering for Layla and Sarah for so long, and Doc just said, no, I'm not letting you take them. I got their back. Eisen has said multiple times he does not want the smoke. Oh, and one other thing about Doc. Sarah's a god tier, and they were going to imprison her. Doc is literally just an elite tier, and probably not that strong. He's definitely getting the death penalty if he gets caught. Oh god, is Doc next on the list? Oh, fuck. Shit. Fuck. Nonetheless, Doc's in major trouble now. But he's said, I got my people's back. Eisen has said throughout the series he does not want the smoke. He doesn't want responsibility. He doesn't want his life to be in jeopardy. He told Remy the first time they were doing vigilante shit, he said, no, fuck this shit. We're done. We're not doing it anymore. Like, fuck off. And now, not only has he said, okay, if we're going to do this, we can't be doing bullshit like this anymore. He's also said, hey, if we're spreading UnOrdinary, I think I have a way that we can do it, guys. Eisen is willing to put aside his own cowardice. I'm not gonna lie, guys. I'm pretty sure that right now, as he's speaking, as he's full of confidence right now, I'm sure on the inside, Eisen is shitting bricks. But he's shitting those bricks and still saying, my friends need my help. My friends need my help, and I'm gonna help them. Because they would help me. Eisen is being there for his friends. Both of these characters who have both said in the past that they don't want to be involved in things like this have chosen to sacrifice that for the sake of their friends. And I think that is amazing. And because of that, because of Eisen's situation, and because of the episode of itself, I will give episode 330 a level 9 ranking, honestly. It's a really good episode. So, that is going to be it for this video. Let me know what you guys think down below in the comments. And, yeah. Thank you all so much for watching. See you guys back tonight for more UnOrdinary. But as always, see you, Space Cowboy.